Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos. This block is called Optical Illusion, and it's 12-inch finished. Here is the diagram. We have quarter square triangles, half rectangle triangles, and half square triangles in this block. Here are 4 blocks put together. And if you choose the right colors, the blocks put together will look like slight curves, or like they're rotating. Patch A is a 4-inch finished quarter square triangle. We cut squares at 5 1/4 inches, cut them in half twice diagonally, and we'll get 4 patches. You have several ways you can piece these. You can rotary cut the patches, and if so, here are the number of patches you need for each of these fabrics. You can use your AccuQuilt, and these dies will get you this shape, and when you use AccuQuilt, you are cutting patches. And the third method is to use the quarter square triangles 4 at a time. If you do this method, you just cut the squares and you do not subcut them. And this tells you here how many squares you need if you use that method. For patches B and C, these are for the half rectangle triangles. Patch B goes one way and patch C goes the opposite way. We have 3 methods here as well. You can use the rectangle tool from the Tri-Rec set. If you do that, you'll cut one strip at 4 1/2 times 15 inches, fold the fabric wrong sides together, and cut 4 sets of half rectangle triangles from the background fabric. For the other 2 fabrics, the blue and the gray, from each fabric, cut one at 4 1/2 by 7 inches, place the fabric wrong sides together, and cut 4 sets of half rectangle triangles. That's if you want to use the Tri-Rec tool, or if you have any other kind of rectangle ruler, like the perfect rectangle from Creative Grids. And that will get you your half rectangle triangles. If you rotary cut, we're going to cut rectangles and cut them in half once on the diagonal. We're cutting these slightly larger so we can trim them down to the correct size, and I will go over cutting these. You'll place the fabrics right side up. For the B patch, you'll need 4 patches of the background and 4 patches of the dark blue. For the C patch, you'll need 4 patches of the background and 4 patches of the gray. And then here are the AccuQuilt dies that will cut these shapes. Patch D is a 2-inch finished half square triangle. You cut 2 7/8 inch squares, cut them in half once on the diagonal, and you'll get 2 patches. If you are cutting your patches, you'll need 4 patches each of the gray fabric and the medium blue fabric. Here are the AccuQuilt dies that will cut the same patches. And your other method is to make half square triangles 2 at a time. If you do that, we cut the squares to the same size, but we do not subcut them. And this tells you how many squares you need of each fabric if you're using that method. Here are the fabrics I've chosen. Patch A is the quarter square triangles. I'm going to use the method 4 at a time quarter square triangles, so I have cut squares. This is patch B and patch C. I'm going to use the rotary cutting method where I piece the half rectangle triangles and then trim them down to the correct size. And patch D are the half square triangles, and I'm going to use the method half square triangles 2 at a time. Let's start with the quarter square triangles 4 at a time. If you're not familiar with this method, here is a short tutorial that tells you how. For the quarter square triangles 4 at a time, we have our 4 squares. This fabric will show up twice in each quarter square triangle. Put these right sides together, so one with the dark and one with the light. Mark a diagonal line on the backs of both of these fabrics. Stitch on both sides of the diagonal line on both of these pieces. Cut on the diagonal line. Normally I press the seams open, but for this technique, press toward the fabric that is duplicated. Press toward the yellow fabric on all of these. Take the different fabrics and match them together and flip this over. What we're doing is making sure the yellow fabric is on opposite sides, and we're using the seam allowance or the pressed seam as our guide, and we're nesting these seams. And you want to make sure that all of these sides are even. Draw another diagonal line. I like to put some pins on here just to hold it in place while I take it over to the sewing machine, because I don't want the seams to unnest. Stitch on both sides of the diagonal line and do the same thing for this set. Cut them apart on the diagonal line, and when we open them up we have quarter square triangles. They all look the same. Press open and then cut off all the nubs. I just realized I forgot to show you page 2 that has the steps for piecing. So we've done step 1, the quarter square triangles. Here are the quarter square triangles. Next, step 2, we're going to piece the half rectangle triangle units. These are the fabrics for the half rectangle triangle. We have 2 for the dark fabric, 2 rectangles for the light fabric, and 4 rectangles for the background fabric. Stack the 2 light fabrics together and the 2 dark fabrics together, because we're going to stack these and cut them all at the same time. Now stack 2 background rectangles on top of each one. When I'm following instructions, I like to match what the diagram says. This is patch B, and the fabrics are background in dark blue. In patch C, the fabrics are background in gray. I have them stacked just like this. So this is patch B and this is patch C. If we look on patch B, we see that the diagonal line is cut from the upper left to the lower right. Cut this from the upper left to the lower right. Here's patch C, and it is cut from the lower left to the upper right. Let's take these apart and see what we have. These were all stacked right sides up, so when we unstack them, everything is facing up. These 2 and these 2. And these will go together like this. So there is our 1 half rectangle triangle. Now let's open this one. This is patch C, and we have our 2 this way. So these are going this way. Let's just take 1. Like this. Once we piece these together, we're going to sew them together like this. Let's piece these half rectangle triangles. I'm going to turn over the light fabric like this. So now this is the back side facing up. I'm taking a ruler that has a 1/4 inch marking on it. And I want to place that 1/4 inch marking line just below the fabric, just right up against the fabric, but not covering the fabric. Now we take our pencil and mark a line. You really only need to mark the left side and the right side, so I'm not going to go across all the way. So we marked both these sides. So we turned it over now, the right sides are facing up again, because I like to lay them out like this so I know I'm doing it right. Flip this over, and we're going to start here at the bottom. Our marked line here, where it meets the bottom of the fabric, I want to match that to the bottom of this fabric. So we'll just place it like this, and I'm matching the edges here. I keep my finger on it, and then let's go up to the top and match the edges here. When you do that, you're really close to matching this upper line with the fabric at the bottom. Stitch 1/4 inch all the way down. Here's what the piece looks like after it's sewn. Press the seams open. Now we're going to trim it down to the right size. For this you'll need a ruler that has the 1/4 inch mark here and the 1/4 inch mark here, and they intersect at this point. This is the point you're going to use to trim your half rectangle triangle to the correct unfinished size. Place the ruler down, and we want to line up where this intersects here. We want that to line up on the seam line. This point right here where the two 1/4 inch lines intersect, that's what you want right on top of your seam line. We want to trim this part here to 2.5 inches. And if I look, here is my 2.5 inch mark. So I can see I have plenty of fabric there that I can trim this later. Then over here you want to trim to the 4.5 inch mark. So we're going to look over here to make sure we have 4.5 inches of fabric going from here to the 4.5 inch mark. So there's plenty of fabric there. And I have plenty of fabric, just enough to cut off at the top and this side. Now I'm going to trim this the right side and trim across the top. And you'll see that it leaves just a slight little piece of fabric on this side, and that's what you need to be able to get a perfect point when you sew this half rectangle triangle to another piece of fabric. Rotate this like this. We've trimmed this side and this side, so we're going to line up the 4.5 inch mark here and the 2.5 inch mark down here where we just trimmed. So there's 4.5 there, 2.5 there. And when you do that, you'll see that this intersection here lines up right on that seam line. And that's what you want. So you have your 4.5 inches going this way, your 2.5 inches going this way. Now we cut the right side and the top. And there's our extra fabric right there as well. You'll have 8 of the half rectangle triangles to finish. You'll have 4 of these and 4 of this color. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and do the half square triangles. Well, I had a snafu with my camera. It was not recording when it said it was recording. So I went through and finished the block thinking it was recording. So let me just go through it with you. We're just following the steps here, and we ended up on step 3 where we sewed the 2 half rectangle triangles together. So you'll sew them together and press the seams open, and you'll make 4 of those. Next, we do the half square triangles, and I did the half square triangles 2 at a time to make 4 triangles for this pinwheel. And I will put a short tutorial that shows you how to do half square triangles 2 at a time. On the back side of the light fabric, we're going to draw a diagonal line, put the fabrics together, right sides together, and we're going to stitch on either side of the diagonal line. Here is the diagonal line drawn, and then the stitching on both sides. Now we cut this in half along the diagonal line. Then we have our 2 half square triangles. Press the seams open and cut off the nubs. So you sew the half square triangles into a pinwheel, like step 5. Press the seams, then you look at the diagram and sew the block together. Here's the block. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos.